What's up, guys? This is Matt Day from the Matt Day Photo Film Show, and today's episode we're going to be taking a look at the Hasselblad 500cm. This is a 6x6 medium format camera. This is probably one of my favorite cameras of all time, so much that it's tattooed on my forearm with a few other cameras. But this is a camera that I used obsessively for a little over a year. This was kind of my main camera that I was using for a while. And I actually ended up selling this camera to a good friend of mine, and recently Molly and we decided to buy it back from him, so now it's back. And that was one of the circumstances whenever I decided to sell it to him. I wasn't really using it as much at the time, and I kind of made the deal that if he were to ever sell it again, we would get first dibs, and sure enough, here it is. So happy to have this one back. Molly's actually going to be using this camera a lot, and I'm excited to see that. We're getting ready to go down to Tennessee in about a week, so she'll be using this camera pretty much the entire time, so I'm excited to see what she does with it. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started talking about the camera itself. Like I said, it's a 6x6 medium format camera, so you're going to get 12 shots on a 120 back, but there are also 220 backs, so you can get 24 shots on those. And we'll talk more about the backs and how the camera is such a modular system here in a minute. But yeah, I've got the waist level viewfinder right here, and the 80mm Zeiss planar lens. It's the 2.8 80mm T-Star, which there are a bunch of different versions. There's like the C version, the CF, the T-Star, the non-T-Star. There's a million different versions. I have the CF T-Star version, but I've heard from friends of mine who have all the other different versions. They're all great. I mean, Zeiss makes amazing lenses. So this is sort of the normal lens on a 6x6, the 80mm. I also have the 150mm f4, I believe, and this is a really good portrait lens as well. But the 80mm is probably what stays on 99% of the time. So yeah, like I was saying a minute ago, the camera, it's a really modular system in that you can pretty much build the camera to fit your needs. So for instance, like I said, this is the waist level viewfinder, but I also have a prism viewfinder right here, so that way it's not, it's corrected whenever you're looking through the viewfinder. For instance, if you're using a waist level viewfinder, if you guys aren't familiar with it, there's no mirror in there to correct the way that the lens is bouncing off the mirror in the camera body. So normally the camera, or your scene that's going through the lens would hit the mirror and then hit another mirror in your prism, and that's going to make sure you're looking at exactly, the way your eye is going to see. So if, something is over here, whenever you look through the prism viewfinder, it's going to be over there as well. But with a waist level viewfinder, horizontally things are backwards. So with the waist level viewfinder, that's how it is. But like I said, if you use a prism viewfinder, that's going to correct that for you. And this was actually the friend of mine that I sold this to. He took Molly and I's wedding photos, and I ended up buying this off of another friend of mine as a gift. So now I have the gift that I got him. But yeah, the prism viewfinder is great if you're wanting to shoot even at eye level. Since you don't have to look down above the camera, you can kind of hold it up a little bit higher. And also it does make things a little bit easier, like I said, with that orientation of things being correct as far as how your eye sees. So the prism viewfinder is nice though, because it is so compact. So really all it is, other than the magnifier, it's basically just a shade for your focusing screen, so that way you can see it clearly. But it basically lifts up just like this, and you can also pull that little tab over, and that's your magnifier, so that way you can really look down in there and get a better look at your focusing screen and kind of get your sharp focus. But to put that back down, you just push it in like that, and it locks in, and then you just fold down these doors just like that. And I mean, it makes a really, really compact camera for, whenever you're taking it with you in and out of a camera bag. It's a really small system for being 6x6. So yeah, like I said, you can really build the camera out. So if you wanted to switch your film backs, load one with black and white, one with color, or one with 400 speed, one with 100 speed, whatever it may be, this way you can, change your options mid-roll, and you don't have to finish the entire roll or, rewind it and then go back to that same frame like if you were shooting on 35mm. So yeah, that's a really nice a nice side of shooting with a modular system like this, where you can switch roles in between shooting. So not only can you change that, like I said, you can change your viewfinder. This is just the waist level viewfinder, like I said. Right here is your focusing screen, and you can even change your focusing screen as well, which I'm not going to take it out because I don't have any other ones, and I try not to take them out or touch them as little as possible. But you can get some with different screens. You can get them with more of a matte finish, some brighter screens. This one here is a grid screen, which I've found to be kind of nice because whenever I'm shooting 6x6, I like to shoot really symmetrically, since both of the sides of the frame are even. So I like the focusing screen with the grid. Some people like the one with just the rule of thirds. Some people prefer it with nothing. But there's plenty of different options for focusing screens. But like I said, this is the prism viewfinder, and it literally just slides into place. And you have to do this without the back on. But yeah, it just slides in, locks into place just like that, and it makes it really nice so you can actually see what your eye is seeing. To take it off, you just slide it right back like that. Go ahead and put this back on, and yeah, the back, it just pops into place really easy. Just line up the bottom and then click. That little tab right there is what locks it, and you're good to go. To change your lens, just like any lens mount on a normal camera, push down right here and rotate it. But you can see right here it's not turning, and that's because the lens isn't cocked. For some of these cameras, I'm not sure what the reason is. It seems to be on a lot of leaf shutter lenses. That might be it. I'm not really sure. But you have to cock the lens before you remove it or mount it. So right there is your crank to advance the film and also cock your shutter. So now that it's cocked, I'll be able to remove the lens just like that. And you can see the mirror in there because, like I said, this is an SLR. But to mount the lens, you just line it up like this, rotate it, and it clicks right into place, just like you would expect. I'll go ahead and mount the 150mm lens just so you guys can see that as well. Just like that. And there you go. So it's a much longer lens than the 80mm, but like I said, the 150mm, it's an insanely sharp lens and really, really good focal length for portraits. So yeah, that's that lens. The camera does have mirror lockup, like I was saying in the Pentax 6.7 video. With a mirror as big as you're going to have in a camera like this, there's a good vibration whenever you're shooting, so you're going to feel that. And if you're shooting a slower shutter speed, sometimes that can cause your motion blur because it's going to shake your camera so much. So some people, they like to use a tripod and then do the mirror lockup, and some people I know even shoot with the mirror lockup handheld. They just make sure that they don't move the camera too much after they hit it, or else their composition might be different than what they originally wanted. So like I said, once your shutter is cocked, you'll want to remove your dark slide, which is right here. And the reason for a dark slide is your interchangeable backs. Whenever you take it off, this is what's going to cover your film plane. So you just take it off, and you'll be able to shoot. So on the side, once your shutter is cocked, if you just push up on this right here, right there, what you heard was the mirror lifting up, and this is just the mirror lockup feature. And like I said, after that, you'll be able to shoot, and your mirror isn't going to flop first and then the shutter firing. All you're going to hear is the shutter firing, which this is a leaf shutter camera, so it's pretty quiet, but I'll let you guys hear it. Right there, that's all it was. And now whenever I let go of this, there's a rear curtain back here at the back of the camera body, and you're going to hear that as well, just like that. So like I said, it's a leaf shutter camera, but there is a curtain back here. So that's one thing that I do want to make sure I cover in this video, because it's something that I don't think everybody knows about. So go ahead and put my dark slide back in, because if you try and take the back off without the dark slide, you can't, which is a nice thing in case you forget. So you put your dark slide back in, now you can take the back off, and like I said, that's what the dark slide does right there. It covers up your film. But right back here, this is the curtain that I was just talking about. Now, like I said, the shutter is actually in the lens, so all your shutter speeds you're going to adjust right here on the front of the lens, but on the back of the camera you do have this curtain. Now, like I was saying, it doesn't close until I let go of the shutter release. So let's say you're shooting a speed of 1 second. Now, if you wanted to shoot that and you hear it right there, you could hear the shutter, and then I let go. That way your film is going to be exposed the entire time that the 1 second speed is going off. So if you didn't do this, I'm going to go ahead and hit it and immediately let go of the shutter release. Your shutter is still open, it's still trying to expose the film, but this closed before the shutter did, so you're not even going to be exposing your film. So if anybody has ever had any issues with exposing their film on long shutter speeds and they're not holding the shutter release in, that's why. It's because this curtain is closing before the lens does. So anytime you're shooting a slower speed, or really any speed, even if I'm shooting at the highest speed, which on this lens is 1/500th of a second, I always make sure that I'm holding in the shutter release until I know for sure that my shutter is already fired, because you don't want to have this interrupt your exposure while this is still open. So like I said, just for another demonstration, you hold this in, and now the shutter is done. So it's not exposing your film the entire time this is open, because the shutter in the lens is already closed, but whenever I let go, then it finally closes. So that's one thing you want to make sure you're doing if you're shooting longer speeds. You just want to make sure that you're holding this shutter release in the entire time, or else your exposure is not going to be right. Which, yeah, while I'm talking about it, your shutter release, if you couldn't tell, is right here. It is threaded, so if you want to use a cable release, you can. I know some people use the soft shutter releases on this camera. For some reason, mine doesn't fit any of the soft shutter releases. The threads seem to be a lot larger in diameter compared to most, so I'm not sure if this is a different shutter release than the originals. I'm not sure, but either way, you do have that option. Like I said, this is where you advance your film and also cock your shutter, but this is also another modular part of the camera. So if you didn't want to use this one, you just simply do this and you can change that. Some people have basically just a little knob right here that they twist. Some people have a newer version of the crank, but this is the one I have. If you're wanting to use a strap on the camera, you do have 2 strap lugs right here on each side. I never have had a strap for this camera, but it is an option. And also, as you would expect, you do have your tripod mount right down here at the bottom. So yeah, I mean, the camera is, it's an awesome camera. 6x6 negatives are awesome. Tons of detail. Zeiss lenses are great whenever you match that up with a negative that big. And it's fun. They're awesome cameras to use. They're fun to shoot. They look awesome. They're just really, really well-built cameras, and they're some of the most inspiring cameras to shoot. I think that whenever you start working with different formats and different camera bodies, they're going to kind of influence you to shoot a certain way, in my opinion, anyway. But this is definitely a really fun camera to use. And like I said, for being a 6x6 camera, it's really not that big at all. And I mean, it's built well. You can feel that it's heavy, but it's really, really manageable to use. But yeah, that's part of the fun, is the fact that you can really build the camera to fit your needs. Like I said, I'll go ahead and change this up here. Put that on, and then, yeah, let's go ahead and maybe mount the 150mm lens again. Yeah, this is an awesome setup. I mean, especially with the prism finder and this lens, if you're shooting portraits, I mean, this is great. So for you guys, for your sake, I'll go ahead and load up a roll of film too, so we can kind of talk about that. And like I said, if you want to take the back off to do this, it makes it a little bit easier. You just want to make sure your dark slide's in, or else you're not going to be able to. Let's set that down here. And of course, we'll load a roll of Tri-X. But with your film back, you're going to have your back and your magazine. And basically, right here on the side, you pull this little tab out, rotate it, and then this will come out this way. So all this really is holding your magazine that's, holding your film. So whenever you're done shooting a roll, you're going to take your film, load it up right over here, or take your spool, I'm sorry, and load it up right over here to feed your film into. And one thing to keep in mind is this little tab right here. basically whenever this is flipped this way, the tab is raised up, and whenever you turn it, it kind of locks it down into place. Try and let you guys get a good visual of that. Whenever you turn it, it locks it down. So this is important whenever you're first loading the roll. So I'll kind of walk you guys through that setup here. Like I said, you start on this side, and these little tabs flip down just like this, which make it pretty easy. So you start with the roll right here, and you want to make sure the black goes around, the black side of the tape, or of the film, comes around this way. And this is just paper, it's not the actual film. But you want to wrap it around this side here, because if you think about it, this is going to go into the camera like this, and you want your film right here, because your camera is going to be set up this way, so your scene is going to come through the lens and hit right here. So that's an easy way to remember, which way you're going. I've had some people ask if they just bring it directly over. Don't do that, because one, it's not going to expose your film, and two, I'm not even sure if it would work that way. But whenever you bring the black paper around, you want to make sure you line it underneath this little tab here. You don't want it to go over top, because this is going to help keep it in line. So you just make sure you stay underneath that, and then bring it around to this side, and just like loading any 120 roll, you just make sure you line that little leader of the film into this, and on the bottom here, there's a little knob that you can just twist and just slowly roll it on, and right here you're going to see a start arrow. Now that start arrow right here is lining up with this little red triangle on the bottom. So once you get to that point, you're good to go. And at that point, I always flip this down, and that just locked that into place, as you can see, to make sure your film's going to be loaded properly. Set it up in here, and then once you set it down into the film back, you just do this, and that locks it into place, and now you're good to go. So your film is loaded. Now the next thing you want to do is mount this to the camera, but there's something you want to know beforehand. Right here, there's a little dot with a little window with a white dot in there, and right here there's a little white dot as well. Now, if I shoot the camera like this, that little white dot is now red. So it's going to be red until I advance the shutter. So you always want to make sure you do this beforehand, because let's say you wound this up to your first frame, loaded it, and then advanced your crank here, that's going to cock your shutter, but it's also going to advance past the first frame that you never even shot. So in order to not waste any film, make sure that both of these are set to white before you mount them. So right now it says 0, and all you do is just take this and wind it just like you would expect until it stops, and then you just flip it over, and it says 1, and you're on white, just like this is on white, so you're good to go. Go ahead and mount the camera, or mount the back onto the camera just like that, and you're ready. Now one thing you do want to keep in mind when you're loading is to make sure you do that, because if you just load it or lock the back onto the lens like this without first advancing the film, you're going to be sitting there shooting 3 or 4 or 5 frames, and then you're going to realize you're just now getting to the start of the film on the roll. So you would be sitting there exposing black paper for those first few shots, and you're not even going to see those. So make sure you always do advance to the first frame before you start shooting, or else you're going to be exposing paper and get nothing out of it. So anyway, that's pretty much the entire camera. That was a pretty lengthy overview of the camera, but there's a lot to talk about with this camera. It's a fun camera. There's so much room for customization on the camera. You can really build it to kind of fit your needs. So that pretty much covers everything that I have to talk about. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.